Muslim, I'm just insulted. It's disgraceful that this is one of the mosques, or the mosque that he picked to be the first visit. The Islamic Society of Baltimore, first of all, if you go to their website, it's like a covert operation. There's no name on it. It basically has pictures of individuals but no names. They had an imam, Muhammad al-Sheikh, who was there from 83 to 89, and then another 10 years, came out of the Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan, has had online imam sermons in which he basically excused Palestinian suicide bombing. He then went in to fill in. He was the guy who took over a Dar al-Hijra mosque in Northern Virginia after Awlaki left. And I'll remind you, Awlaki is the imam that declared war in the United States, radicalized Nidal Hassan and so many other Americans against our country. So this mosque is very concerning. They are very into gender apartheid. The Imam Yasin Sheikh in 2013 has a YouTube sermon from just 2 years ago calling homosexuals basically psychological deviants, a disorder, and basically espousing a very extreme opinion about homosexuality, which I would think is at divergence from the president's position.
Okay, and there we go. That is, let me get you the right screen, is a Muslim leader out there showing some concerns with the fact that Obama chose to go to this particular mosque versus another mosque because of all the extremism that comes out of it. You heard what he had to say. I basically put up a couple stories illustrating the same thing. It's fine he wants to go to the mosque and show support with the Muslim community. The problem is when you go to a mosque that's fundamentally ran by an extremist with ties to Muslim Brotherhood and everything else, then you got an issue. And I can't believe that his team wouldn't do enough research to realize that. It's like a snafu of major proportions. This is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report. One-man show. I do everything from the production to the research. I also take care of the Scoop web pages and social media and all that stuff. So it's a truly one-man show. It is unedited, unscripted. I do read some documents. I put them up and I opine on them. You'll see me looking back and forth because sometimes I would like to use them to make sure I got all my facts straight instead of just spitting out garbage, as some troll said today. We start off just by looking at the news that's on my National Scoop page. So let's go ahead and jump over there real quick and check it out. All right, let me move this over. What do we got first on stories here on the Scoop? Some humor at Bernie's expense. I just thought it was funny. Interstate 80 going up to Truckee because of the bad weather. We had an incident which closed it down. 29 vehicles were involved in that incident. Microsoft calls Iowa for Hillary before it even happens, before the votes can even be counted. Here's the issue with this. Sanders' campaign basically said, look, before the Iowa caucus, we want to put in our own system as a backup so we can see what Microsoft puts out and compare it to what we're putting out, because they were concerned about some fudged numbers, if you will. And when you have Microsoft coming out before the caucus and calling it for Hillary, and they're the one who's in charge of doing the vote count, I get Bernie's concern with that. And so that article basically covers that issue. Breaking Russia says that Turkey artillery is shelling the Syrian territory. It's not a surprise because they're shelling right there where the Kurds are, and they do not want the Kurds to gain any territory or any more power. So that's why they're doing that. This is just on a lightning storm. This guy, look at this schmuck. That's his mugshot. He beat and strangled the grandpa and grandma, broke the sternum. Let me see what it said. Police say the man's attack left grandmother with 6 broken ribs and a broken sternum. What a punk. All right, this Department of Justice is investigating San Francisco. The report didn't really say much. It was just basically letting people know that they're investigating it. They believe this article that came out by the LA Times is it's due to a 26-year-old black man that was shot and killed by police. Trump staffer claims sex discrimination. She basically said that they were at a rally, her and another lady, and Trump didn't want them going out there because they looked too hot and it would send the wrong message or something like that. Good luck there. Let's see. This is on Islamicide, how a Mullah mafia is destroying Pakistan. And it goes on, and it basically discussed what happened with this one individual. I think I put the story up last week where he cut off his own right hand. And what happened is they're asking some questions like who's loyal to Allah or whatever. He raised his hands. They asked another question. He raised his hand, not thinking. And they said that's blasphemy. What you did was wrong. So the kid was all freaked out, went home, ended up chopping off his hand. And they saluted this mosque saluted the kid for doing it. And so that story covers that. And some of the concerns that they have. This is just a German woman who beat up a Muslim who's been harassing women on the street. We're going to take a look at this. This is it's a conservative black chick, and that's what she goes by, and Crystal Wright, and she chimes in on how the black voters are taken advantage of by the Democratic Party. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
To the black vote, blacks have shown a slavish support for the Democrat Party for over 50 years. And part of me wonders if the Republican Party should even bother asking for the black vote, because black Americans seem to like being political dummies. We're the only race that has voted lock, stock, and barrel for the same party for over 50 years. I can be a black liberal and black voters won't even question my policies. Isn't that pathetic? I mean, can't we do better? I mean, that's all Democrats have to do. It's a sad state of affairs for blacks when all they have to do is pander and insult to black Americans decade in and decade out.
And it's not just this lady saying it. I put on a video last week or the week prior illustrating where in Chicago where they're very upset. They're saying, look, because we keep voting for blacks, and they know it. We vote Democrat. All the blacks do. They know they got our vote, and they're taking advantage of us. And the guy's like, look, here in Chicago, we got all these issues. We have all these killings. We have all this unemployment, all this strife. And who's in charge? The Democrats. Republicans haven't been in charge here for years. And so why do we just keep giving them, handing our vote instead of looking at other options that are out there? Let's see, who else we got going on here? They Pato beaten by vigilantes after being caught in the act with a 6-year-old. I guess they beat him up pretty bad at a party, deservedly so. This is on Zika, the outbreak, and genetically modified mosquitoes. We're going to take a listen to it. You know, someone said, "Oh, you're a troll," and they put up Snopes, and you guys know how much I love Snopes. It's a husband and wife team that are liberals, and for some reason, everybody thinks they're right about everything. And what I put up there was a theory, because it was coincidental that this outbreak happened at the same time as the release of these GM mosquitoes down in Brazil, and there's no research behind it. Nobody's no regulations, nothing. And it's pretty coincidental. The next thing you know, suddenly they got this huge uptick with the Zika virus. Let's take a listen to what they have to say here on the Fox show. I actually haven't even heard this, so let's see.
Be to blame for the Zika virus outbreak. The mosquitoes were engineered by a British biotech firm and released in Brazil back in 2012 to help stop the spread of dengue fever. The World Health Organization holding an emergency meeting about that virus today. More than 30 people, including 4 pregnant women in the United States, are infected with that virus. It's hit 11 states across.
And so you got this idiot out there, and apparently he knows more than CDC, everybody else that's looking at this theory that possibly Zika virus is something that came from the GM mosquitoes. Nobody's saying it is. It's just a theory because it all happened around the same time. And the tetracycline factor was in there. They said they'll die. The genetic code will kill them off before they can multiply and give birth and stuff. But the problem is if there's tetracycline mixed in, which there was with the soil and everything else in Brazil, then there may be another outcome. And this troll gets on there and says, "Oh, Snopes says this." So Snopes knows everything. And the guy sounded like such an idiot, and I wish people would realize how much they look like idiots when they get on there trolling. And the guy said something, and it was obvious he didn't even listen to my argument or my rant on it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said anything. But it's a guy. I see him on my local pages. He trolls constantly on there too. Alabama cops are hunting a kidnapped couple home invasion suspects. If you've seen them, it's obviously contact authorities. Let's see. Is Congress declaring war on ISIS or on you? This is a piece by Ron Paul Rand Paul's father, and he talks about how McConnell had the authorization, war authorization, that he tried to slip in and didn't really tell anybody he was going to try slipping that through. And it's basically to say the war against ISIS. And what the measure does is give the president the ability to place troops anywhere he feels, as long as he states ISIS is operating, and that includes here in the United States. If he says ISIS is here in South Dakota, he can place troops there based upon this war authorization. And this should be concerning to many individuals, and a lot of people, a lot of Democrats and Republicans are speaking out against it, and it was a neocon move to put this out there. So very interesting developments there, and we'll see what takes place out of it. Chemicals found in Colgate toothpaste linked to cancer. What's this? Scientists granted permission to genetically modify human embryos. That's concerning. There wasn't a lot of information on there. I went in, there was like maybe 5 sentences. Not sure about that one. We'll see what happens. Cyclists lose. I just like to laugh. Nail polish. I put this up here. My daughter does nail polish every day, and this study finds that nail polish contains some harmful ingredients in there that can wreak havoc on your body. And she's in there constantly doing her nail polish. She's got a bunch of nail polish all over the walls. And so I thought it was interesting in case any other kids or even adults are out there doing that. Let's see. This one is about a Texas Supreme Court ruled 8-0 in favor of cheerleaders that they could put biblical banners on their cars, which I guess there was some problem with the local school there. Turmeric kills cancer cells. This guy, look at that poor guy. Basically, from what I gathered, he answered the door and some idiot threw acid on him. And he ran, he tried to wash his face off, but look at that scar that he's got to live with for the rest of his life. Amazing. Scots are teaching police how to handle issues out in the streets without using a gun. And these are U.S. cops. They're going through this instruction because some people feel that the cops are too quick on the draw with their gun, or even with their taser for that matter. What else we got here? Games people play. This is just how chess came in, and they said, look, it upsets religious fundamentalists, and we won't allow it anymore. And they put out an edict, I think it was in Saudi Arabia, saying no more chess allowed. Again, that's in the Islam faith. Young people are poor, jobless, and believe that the American dream is dead. We're probably going to touch on that, so I'll leave that alone for now. 12 common household products that you should immediately throw out that could cause cancer. What doesn't cause cancer anymore? This is on the immigrants and that came ashore, the EU. Let me see if I can make it big.
With the state authorities following their arrival in Europe, the disappearances include 5,000 children in Italy alone. Many of the missing children are feared to have been whisked away into sex trafficking rings or the slave trade.
Yeah, and there's about 10,000 of these poor kids out there, and they just threw them into the immigration asylum rooms, wherever they go, and they've disappeared. And these are kids 18 to 24 years old. 10,000 migrants, folks, gone. And they don't know where they're at. They were unaccompanied. They just disappeared. Alarming news there. That came out of China news, CCTV news. And let's see what else we got here. Police shooting. Oh, we'll watch that one in a second. Let me go back up. Police shooting. There we go. Another shooting caught by police where a man was shot. Why is not so clear. Witnesses said he had a gun to his head. Police say. I think they meant police say he was subject to a pedestrian stop, but won't elaborate any further on details. We're seeing this all too often. This lady, if you watch this, she's walking her dog. She doesn't really stop at this street. Here, let's see if we can get it big. Okay, let's back that up. Hold on. All right, she's walking her dog. She doesn't stop here. She just sees a crosswalk and figures, hey, I can keep walking. A car comes and turns and boom, runs over a dog and knocks her down. Two things. A, I get this all the time in Venice where people come up to the crosswalk, and even though you're supposed to stop if pedestrians are in the crosswalk, you're not supposed to stop necessarily if they're there. You can, I do, but what happens is too many people walk up. They don't think they have to stop. They think automatically I can walk and you need to stop right in your tracks, which is what this lady did. And unfortunately, the dog is dead, and they're looking for the individual driving that car now. So I think both are at fault here. Let me see. The aluminum thing, for some reason, it was. Someone said aluminum, that it's associated with Alzheimer's. That's actually just came out this weekend, that some association between Alzheimer's and aluminum. So it's funny that guy should put that up there. Istanbul, streets literally on fire as protesters clash with police. I don't know if I put up a picture. There's a picture where they've killed over 400 civilians. They say are extremists, Kurds, living in this particular area of Turkey. And I've said it before, Kurds they're a communist faction, which is fine. They believe in communism. That's their thing. They've been extremely helpful in the fight against ISIS. More helpful than the Iraqi forces and any other group out there. They're not as extreme as a lot of these Muslims. That's a tough one there. Let's see what else we got. Nirvana. Let's see. Europe's politically correct, selective passion. How it's destroying there. Let's see, a heartwarming story about a man who asks for scraps, and the Chick-fil-A manager hooks him up. Why Obama is flooding small towns with the most conservative towns with refugees, and I'm going to cover that. I'm going to try to. And Boko Haram, this was just horrendous, where they burned children alive to death as they killed 50 villagers. So let's go ahead. That's basically some of the light of the local news. Let's go ahead and cover some of the more in-depth news, which I like to cover and opine on. A lot of times my national page, if you're new to the show, I put a lot of fluff on there because that fluff drives up the numbers and drives up the number of people that are paying attention. Then I'll put my stories in between. And it's amazing. You can have something on there where you talk about the Zika virus, and you might get 1,000 people that are reached. But you go on and you put about Kardashian's butt or boobs being exposed, and you get 30,000 people reached. And it always amazes me where the train of thought is with most Americans that are out there. We got a couple stories we did want to talk about. I did take a look at the market before coming on because it's opening up in 15 minutes, and it looks like this market's down again, down indicator. And what I've been talking a lot about is this Baltic Dry Index and how it's been at 1400s, now it's down to 300s, and that's a measurement a lot of people use to see how the economy's doing, and also to see it measures the amount of supplies that's moving back and forth, supply and demand. So you got major retailers out there that are in the United States that are starting to shut down their doors. Their stores and shoppers are reportedly seeing bare shelves out in a lot of these places at a lot of the retail locations. And it appears that this the one story that we saw on there said it's a retail apocalypse, essentially. And that it's gone to a whole new level, and it's going to continue going to a new level in 2016 as we start to see this economic slowdown that's going to take place. And we know it's going to because, as I mentioned, now one ship leaving Japan with supplies here, you're going to see the supply on the shelf start to dwindle. And they're saying, one thing I didn't think about, but this article touched on, is the fact that the bricks and mortars are cutting their losses because more people are shopping online and less in the stores, so they're going to supply less. And a perfect example of this is Office Depot, and they started doing this about, I think 2 or 3 years ago, maybe longer, where they used to have a ton of stock in their stores, but they started getting rid of it. They only kept a couple things in there, and you had to buy almost everything online. And so you're seeing this, and it's true in a lot of areas, and a lot of people are saying that it's happening in the lower income areas, in impoverished urban centers, and you're seeing it more there than you are in affluential neighborhoods. And it's not uncommon to go into a mall and see it totally empty like a ghost town, completely abandoned, and I'll attest to that. Just up here, we have Sarasota Square Mall. I went in there during Christmas, and I was amazed. I barely saw anyone in there. Normally during Christmas time, there's a ton of people in there. Not this time, though, and I was pretty much amazed by it. It's been estimated that there's about 1 billion square feet of retail space out there that's sitting empty in this country today. And that's going to get worse as it accelerates, we start to feel that impact of that Baltimore Dry Index down the road. You know, you got stores. We all know about Walmart closing 269 stores. Kmart made the news this weekend because people were upset that the store's closing. That's the only place they could go for the goods. It's the only place that was discounted. JCPenney, 47 stores are going to close. They closed 40 last year. Macy's, they decided that they need to shut 36 stores. And so you're seeing a lot of this. And that's not the whole story, though. That's only part of the story that's out there. Because all over the country, shoppers are noticing, what I said, the bare shelves. And the alarming inventory levels at these stores. And so what's happening? And you're seeing this, it's not just local retailers, it's at prominent, never bring your dog in. Dano! Okay, sorry about that. All right. What was I talking about? The stores. All right. So you look at the numbers, and the shelves are empty. Exports are plummeting. The BDI, I refer to that constantly. It's at an all-time record low, and the amount of stuff being shipped around air, truck, and rail inside this country is basically dropped significantly. And okay, we're done there. All right. Sorry about that. And hopefully I won't have any more distractions. We've been in the initial phase of the major economic downturn that's out there right now, and we're seeing it. All right, and the question is, are you prepared for it? All right, if you're currently working in the retail industry, is your job secure? Are you planning ahead in case we do see this plunge that the BTI, Baltimore Trade Index, BDI, is indicating will be coming surely down the road? So I just wanted to cover on that, trying to get my footing back after the interruption from my lovely dog. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about that story with regarding the refugees and bringing them and relocating them to the smaller cities. A lot of these smaller cities, generally, are conservative leanings. And a lot of refugees are targeting those areas for the resettlement. Not necessarily the refugees, the people that are settling them. Obama will, he's not going to come out and publicly admit that this is happening, but it's just that it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going on here at all. And if you look at just the uproar that the refugee settlements have brought in and caused in small communities in Europe, you're going to start to see that here in Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Kansas, where they're sending these large majority of these refugees. And Obama has deemed large cities such as D.C. just too expensive, which they are, too expensive to move refugees. He's saying, so we're moving them to smaller ones because it's cheaper. It's not because there's more conservatives there, and we can build up our base for the left-leaning liberals when we get these immigrants in to vote. That's what they're saying, and other people are a bit worried about it. If you look at it too, if you drop a few hundred refugees, you go to a major city, you're not going to see it. It's not going to make a significant difference. But if you drop a few hundred refugees in a small town that's only a few thousand people, you're going to start to see that it fundamentally alters the character of that whole area. We're seeing that over in Germany now, where you'll go and you'll drop 2,000 immigrants in a city of 700 Germans. It's going to alter the character of that area, alter the culture of that area. And some people are wondering, is that a way for Barack Obama to come in and fundamentally transform America like he's been wanting to do? And you would think that there would be more employment opportunities, cultural attractions, government services in the larger cities, in the metropolitan areas. I get that the rent's high, but you got to look at some of the benefits there. What kind of jobs are they going to get in these small towns? None. Basically, we, the government, and the citizens that pay the taxes are going to bankroll it. And it's creating an uproar in many areas. And the fact that you don't even know that the immigrants are going there, they're not even communicating it to the local cities, states, and counties. Obama says, I'm not going to tell you guys. You got NGOs out there that are well-funded, and they have been searching out politicians that are more likely, more willing to invite the Obama administration in to resettle these huge swaths of refugees, Islamic refugees in the area. And many are quite willing to just open their door and say, hey, come on in with open arms, because they know they're getting this flow of money from the federal government. And we've seen, like I said before, we've seen this chaos over in Europe. We've got massive waves of Islamic immigration. They've been allowed to resettle in large numbers in small communities. We've seen what's happened. We're seeing the uptick in the crime, the sexual crimes. And now you got the uptick in right-leaning groups that are fed up with it. And you got Merkel finally came out and said, look, she had to change her stance and basically said, hey, once the war's over, these guys have to all go home, which was never her stance before. Good luck getting them home. Good luck finding the 600,000 of them that are missing. So, what's happening over there could someday happen here. It could happen to your wife and daughters, and that's why I share it so much. I'm not saying it will, but if it's happening there, the probability is it could happen here. And fortunately, there's still some communities out there that are standing up against this type of social engineering. Like Sandpoint, Idaho, their city council met and they said, no, we don't want them there. It was a heated debate. They said, no thanks. We don't need your social engineering. We're fine. We don't want this mess. And I think that's because many communities are starting to see the impact these refugees are having over in Europe. But not all of them, like I said, are as fortunate, like Twin Falls. They're going to accept 300 Muslim refugees from Syria beginning in October, I believe it is. And look, I love our country. I love assisting people. I think that's what we're here for. But there's a lot of Christians in Iraq and Syria. The Yazidis, they've been suffering more than anybody. How come we're not helping them? How come only a small, minute number of people are Christians and the rest are these Shia Muslims? The things that ISIS has been doing to the Yazidis over there because they're Catholics or Christians is horrible. Yet you haven't heard a word from Barack Obama or his administration on that. And instead of taking these persecuted Christians, 90% of the refugees are these Sunni Muslims that favor views that are followed by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And my major media, they're silent on this. They're silent about the number of people coming here. They've said 10,000 people. Many people are thinking that they're going to resettle up to 100,000 people here. Barack Obama himself said we are bringing 100,000 refugees this year over the next 2 years. But I'll still have people come on and tell me you're a liar. You don't know what you're talking about. And it's amazing how people can come on there and they'll try to disrupt the thread. You'll put something out there that's research, factual to the T, and they'll come on and say, no, say this, or no, this is lies, you're a liar, just to put that seed of doubt in people's heads. And they know they're full of crap. Now, not all the refugees are coming from Syria. I get that, but the vast majority of them are coming from countries that have radical versions of Sunni Islam, and it's practiced daily. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia. And you got a large number of refugees. They're injected into these small communities. The character is going to fundamentally alter, folks. There's no escaping it. And if you're concerned about what's going on and what is happening, you need to start checking with your local politicians, because the local politicians are making these moves without notifying the communities. And so next thing you know, you're waking up and you got a bunch of Sunni Muslims from Syria in your backyard, changing the whole character of your community. And that's why I say stay active, and I was telling my wife last night, and she's like, I'm amazed at how much stuff goes on here and nobody's getting anything done. Can't we all come together and do something? I'm like, there's just not enough interest. I go, you and I might be interested in fighting, and there might be some other people out there, but it's very limited. And the government knows that. And they know our attention span's very limited. They know they can go out, put a story out on a Friday, and within a week it'll be gone, and just ride it out. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. But if we continue to take them, we're going to look like Europe. And Europe, at first they were supporting, basically, they went out there and they had multiple nations that we went out, we basically destroyed Iraq, Syria, Libya, and that created this refugee crisis. And it brought in a tsunami of Islamic immigration throughout Europe. We brought this on ourselves. Europe has been pushed to the brink of collapse now, and people are starting to get worried. There's lawlessness that is spreading everywhere. Budgets are breaking. Crime is soaring. Fear and hatred are being fueled out there on the right and left. Thanks to people like George Soros, that famous globalist. This is the very same guy that went into the Ukraine and brought on all the chaos there. And now, he's doing it now. And many Europeans are talking about, they're using such words when they describe their country, their economy as collapse, implosion, on the brink. And that's part of their everyday lexicon out there now. Because this crisis is starting to sweep like a wildfire. And they, just like a speeding car, you can't just hit the brakes anytime soon. And the magnitude is becoming increasingly clear. Across wide swaths of the continent, the chaos surrounding refugees is quickly spiraling out of control. It's not just isolated to one area, folks. You're seeing the same issues across the board in different countries. You can look at the New Year's Eve sexual assaults in Cologne, Germany, actually throughout Germany, where you had the train station, over 1,000 male refugees attacking women. Children and women started going to YouTube saying, hey, help us. And they're afraid to, because you can be arrested for that. We saw in Germany a town hall meeting. A guy stood up and noted his concerns about the immigration and the troubles they're bringing. He got arrested. In France, you got the whole Calais, that whole, they call it the jungle encampment. You got roaming bands of migrants and refugees just wreaking havoc there. Stockholm. You had that train station there where you had it overran by North African youths. I don't know. And it could be that establishment is out there and they're merely pointing out the obvious to avoid losing what little remains of their credibility in the public's eye. After all, these people have eyes and they can see what's going on. They know what's going on. But, for the prime example is the overwhelming amount of refugees coming here are men of fighting age. Why aren't they staying in Syria? I think it was a Czech president that said that. Why aren't they in Syria fighting for their country? They're starting to discuss some better, tougher solutions. Closing off the border, pretty effective, putting up the fence in some of the Eastern Bloc countries of Europe. Deporting those able-bodied men who can fight and saying, get the hell out. Go back to Syria. Fight your war. Save your country. Some people are saying Germany is too tied up in trying to absolve themselves of how reckless the Nazis were back in the 40s, and they need to get rid of that. In addition to getting rid of Merkel. Merkel, what a joke. She is destroying the very fabric of Germany, of that society, and of Europe, because she has a lot of say over the rest of them. Like Italy, they put out the propaganda the other day. This is where we're going to come in, we're going to take over Italy, we're going to take the Pope and cut his head off in the Vatican Square. And we got to stand up against this establishment and their voices that are pushing for this globalism as a solution to all this, like George Soros. Because we here may be on the verge of a collapse, just like we're seeing over in Europe. A societal collapse. We got to stop people like Soros, these NGOs that are running crazy out there, that these people that have been critical in bringing Europe to this brink. They've promoted the whole responsibility to protect doctrine that's being followed out there. You know, you guys went in, you destroyed Syria, you destroyed Libya, you got to help these guys, you got to protect these citizens, you brought this all on. And while most of Europe is at a breaking point in trying to absorb all these millions of refugees, there's even more expected. And there's going to be even more of a burden. There's going to be even more crime. I think they're expecting a million or something like that. And I don't know if that was 2016 or over. I mean, it's one thing to be humanitarians, but come on, folks. Do we want our countries spinning out of control like what we see in Germany? Do we want large demonstrations from these right-wing extremists, the neo-Nazis, the KKK? Do we want to see the rise of such organizations like that? You know, these establishments, they come out and they figured, hey, we destroyed the Middle East with war. We caused this crisis. We got to get out there and we got to accept millions of them. We got to make it right. But it was an engineered crisis by people like Soros. Soros engineered that whole crisis in the UK. He funded that whole crisis in the Ukraine. And we have to be careful here. And we have to hold these guys accountable. The George Soroses of the world. I mean, it's crazy what's happening there. You look at the Middle East and Syria. I've been hearing a lot. There's this Syrian girl. And Mosuai and other medias out there that just keep communicating on what's going out there. And, you know, essentially how in the Middle East, you got food and it's becoming a weapon of war. And many kids are starving out there. In many Syrian towns, they're blockading it. They're preventing food from getting to civilians. They're taking it and selling it on the open market instead of getting it to the civilians for free. And it's escalating, and they're calling this using food as a weapon of war, especially in Syria. You know, they've had this 5-year war going on. It's killed 250,000 people. This is a war that the United States started, folks, I believe, over oil, that oil pipeline. You know, you got the UN, they're getting involved. What a joke. I tell you what, we should not be part of this organization. Yeah, I don't know if anybody saw the reparations thing that came out. I just saw that and I'm like, are you kidding me with the joke of the UN? But they're out there, they're visiting the Syrian towns and they're doing their humanitarian mission. And they brought up Medea, which has about 40,000 people. And they sent some images and they released them to the world, basically showing everybody starving, the populace starving. And it gained international attention. It brought attention to the issue that's going on there. And the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, he came out and he said, we cannot allow them to use food as a weapon of war. And because they're doing that, they're going to constitute it as a war crime. And I don't think they care. I don't think ISIS cares about that. You know, you look at Yemen. God, what a mess there. It's underreported. Nobody talks about it. Saudi Arabia is bombing the hell out of Yemen, killing tons of civilians there. They say some 14.4 million civilians don't have food to eat there. They're being cut off. Access to water and fuel remains scarce in the country. Their Yemenis are being subjected to tactics that constitute the prohibited use of starvation in warfare, that whole food for war thing. And what's going to be done? There's no freedom of movement. Somehow we got to get this food out of ISIS's hands. They're controlling it. Why? I don't know. And this is the type of stuff that keeps me up at night. All right, what do we got? I think I've been talking close to 40 minutes. We got a few more minutes. I want to talk about nuclear. I'm going to end it. I got about a 5 minute, or I think it's about 4 minutes on Planned Parenthood that I'm going to play. That was my rogue rant. I'm going to end the show with that. And basically, I don't talk about the fetuses and everything. And the rant is more in regards to the indictment. How can you indict this group for breaking a law, the very same law that the other group broke, and not do anything to them. Then you got this group, CPM, I forget the acronym. They didn't have intent to follow through with the law that they were breaking. The other one that was breaking the very same law had intent. And again, nothing happened to them. So I go on a rant on it. We'll show that after I talk a little bit about the whole nuclear thing. And I've talked before how with nuclear, Obama's come in, he's building these smaller nuclear weaponry that it can be used. And they're not these big-ass bombs like we saw with Hiroshima. And so one of the ultimate underwriters of our global power and our security is our capability to use nuclear arsenal. You know, you got rogue states out there, nations, you got sponsors of terrorism. There are belligerent countries out there, and they're out there trying to do stuff that many of the society, global society, don't agree with, so they look to America to clamp down on them and keep them in check. And we are able to do this just because we are a nuclear power. We're the superpower. And most international arms experts concur without this deterrent against these states large enough out there to do stuff with WMDs or nuclear bombs or anything like that, there'd be more likelihood of them going out and being rogue. And given all this, we'd like to think that our federal government would be the first, the best out there, the first in line to safeguard and maintain arsenal. But many people, this article suggests that would be wrong, that it's not happening, and that our nuclear deterrent capability is rapidly waning, and that there's no remedy in sight. I've noted this before. I've been out of the Navy, I think, 20, 25 years? About 20 years, I don't know. A little over that. And when I was in there, I was stationed at Pax River, Maryland. My wife used to work at Calvert Cliffs Nuclear Power Plant across the river. You would go in there. It was secure. You couldn't get past the gate. I think I've told a story, and I've shown videos and stuff where people can drive now. There's no one at the gate. There's no armed guards walking around. You get real close to the reactors. You hear constantly about reactors that are leaking because essentially these things are 30, 50 years old, and they're starting to fall apart. The infrastructure, I guess you would say. And how's that impacting us? And it's not just there, it's on our weaponry. They say that the nation's nuclear capabilities were at stake as a result of a projected $5.2 billion shortfall. That's a $5.2 billion shortfall to upgrade and maintain our nuclear weapons. And nobody's addressing it. The problem is known as the broken glass program. It's unexecutable, dead. There is not going to be any money. There's not going to be any additional funding. So we have to find a workaround. And this is our critical infrastructure, folks. It includes roughly half of all nuclear facilities that are approaching half a century in age, deterioration, breaking down, crumbling. Also, this computer system. A lot of these guys are on these old geriatric computer systems where you still use a floppy disk. Yes, a floppy disk. Can you imagine that? And there's no money being allocated to fix this problem. And then you look at the fact that you got an aging ballistic subfleet out there. More than half a century old B-52s flying around. New warhead designs have been halted. Construction and testing by the admin. He said all cost arms control works. You get all these things that are adding up, and we're simply not passing. We're not out there aggressively looking at ways to maintain this nuclear arsenal. It's been ignored for a better part of a decade, and you're starting to see that. We're going to see that more. So it's almost a lot like this whole BDI thing, Baltic Dry Index. You know, I say, hey, you're here now, ships aren't shipping. You're going to see that domino effect later when there's nothing in the stores. We're here now with this nuclear thing. It's deteriorating, and you can fix it. You can try to do something about it now, or you can hold off, and down the road, you're going to have a nightmare to deal with. And it's essentially criminally negligent to abandon this stuff. You know, you have Congress out there. But you have, well, look, you got Bob Gates, okay? Bob Gates, he's the former Secretary of Defense. He went out and he said, last fall, he told Congress that Obama's political aspirations were to get rid of nuclear weapons. And that's why Obama isn't doing anything. That's why he hasn't changed. That's why he's a peacenik. He doesn't want that arsenal there, so he's not doing anything to update it or upgrade it. And so, you know, notwithstanding all this, who's going to fix it? How are we going to fix it? How are we going to go in and resolve this issue? And you can ask any of the presidential candidates, and I guarantee you none of them have an answer. Nobody asks them these tough questions. You know, Hillary and Bernie are probably unwilling to preserve the remainder of the triad of nuclear arsenal that's out there. You know, what if in the dead of the night, an unscheduled sunrise suddenly appears in America, and in the city in our not too distant future down the road? That's a nuclear bomb. All bets are off then. You know, what if one of these nuclear facilities just explodes? What if we have a Fukushima? What will we respond with then? How will we handle it? Nobody knows, and that's the concerning part, folks, that we don't have this direction to handle these issues. Let me get us on the right screen. Sometimes I bounce around so much. It is hard doing a production when you're a one-man operation. All right. I'm going to end the show with that Planned Parenthood road grant, and then I'll just go ahead and end it. So check this out. It's about 4 minutes long. And this is Francesco Abbruzzino. I will see you guys tomorrow. And here is that road grant. Hey everybody, this is Francesco Abbruzzino with the Road Rant. Today I'm discussing the latest Planned Parenthood decision that came out of Texas, where Texas has refused to indict Planned Parenthood for violating the very Texas statute that prohibits attempted sale of human organs. And despite the evidence to the contrary, that Planned Parenthood executives and doctors were trying to sell organ parts on video. The same grand jury decided instead to go after the person that promoted the video, David Davidson with CMP, because he organized, filmed, and released this 60-minute style video, which supposedly violated the same Texas statute, which prohibits the attempted purchase of human organs. In other words, folks, the private individual whose intent to expose possible illegal activity is under indictment for actions that are in connection with an undercover video operation of an illegal actor itself, which is Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood is getting off the hook. Is this not backwards? Does this not concern you? It concerns me. David and his colleague, Sandra Merritt, were also indicted for tampering with government records. Specifically, they falsified some California license. Okay, that's a felony. I get that. The charge sheet for the organ purchase violation is based on Texas Penal Code 48.02, which prohibits the purchase and sale of human organs. So why isn't Planned Parenthood indicted? That's the question. These undercover videos that CMP released certainly seem to show that Planned Parenthood employees were trying to receive a much greater compensation for organs that are aborted, babies that they simply wanted better reimbursement. They talked about getting top dollar so they can go out and get Lamborghinis. They talked about handling and transportation costs to go out and do this harvesting. You even have a Planned Parenthood executive come on saying that she needs it, folks, like I said, for a Lamborghini. Now, she might have been joking, but that's an atrocious joke, isn't it? The grand jury, they believe that David should be charged with offering to purchase human body parts based upon this video. It's almost inconceivable that the same grand jury would not also conclude that Planned Parenthood should be charged with violating the same statute for trying to sell those human body parts. Only one of the two parties appeared to actually have the intent to go through with it too, and that was Planned Parenthood. It wasn't this citizen journalist. And this indictment, it sets a terrible precedence. You know, over the decades, over the years, you have undercover videos where the major media, they go out, and local media too, they go throughout the country, and they do these type of videos. And now we have concerned citizen journalists that are out there doing it, using the same techniques, yet they're coming down on him. They're indicting him. And while this is not a case with Texas statute at issue, there are some federal laws that encourage us citizen journalists to go out and do this type of behavior, but they were ignored over down there in Texas. What we do know, folks, is that there's a lot of unanswered questions regarding the possible bias of this district attorney in Texas and the apparent fixation on prosecuting citizen journalists rather than the malfeasance that was exposed with Planned Parenthood. So today, I want to ask you, what say you? Should action be taken against Planned Parenthood?